You're listening to the Karmic Mirror podcast, where we explore the wisdom tucked within the layers of the self help world.
Together, we bridge the gap between esoteric teachings and practical tools for everyday life, with self love and personal growth at the heart of each conversation.
Whether you're a seasoned seeker or just beginning your path, join us and uncover the magic within and around you.
Hello, Karmic Mirror listeners. We are excited to welcome Taylor Grewe to today's episode. As Chief of Technology at My Human Design and co-host of Human Design Podcast with Jenna Zoe, Taylor is at the forefront of helping people align with their true selves. Her expertise and passion for exploring human design make her a guiding voice in this space. Now, personally, Taylor got on my radar when she started working with Jenna on the podcast and became an expander to me because she's a 3/5, and just really in the workspace and her relationship with Jenna has become such an expander. And then I had the privilege of meeting you, Taylor, at VCon, and how I always describe you is that you're just sunshine, and I mean that in the most beautiful way because you're so warm, you're so inviting, you're so welcoming, and I just think your aura brings a brightness to the world. So, hello, Taylor, and welcome.
You trying to make me cry before we even start?
Yes, of course.
I love it. I had such a good time that weekend meeting you because I don't know, I can kind of just throw in there. It was a very emotional weekend for me, and we connected over some really, really personal stuff. So that was very kismet for me as well to meet you in that moment.
Yeah, it's really beautiful how life comes together and how I was so nervous. I had gone there really being like, Jenna brought me there. My friend was like, "Do you know who Jenna is?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh." And so here I was like, "How do I get to meet Jenna?" And then when I saw you, I was so nervous to come say hi. And it just all was so kismet. And our
Yeah.
conversations really, really
Yeah.
were
Special.
special for me too.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
too.
hmm
But I love your VCon story. First of all, I wasn't there, but it was like totally meant to be that you went and met everyone, and I got to hear about it. And as we'll talk about later, like amplify the excitement, I think. But human design is a huge part of our daily lives, of Karmic Mirror. Of course, we came together over some shared aspects of our own human design. We even recorded an intro to human design episode, which was really fun. I love to write blogs about it because it's how I learn. But for today's topic, we brought in Taylor to help us and our listeners get a better understanding of the emotional and non emotional components of our human design chart. So, if you don't know and you haven't already, download the Human Design with Jenna Zoe app and follow along so you can really understand your chart as we talk, as throughout our conversation. So, Taylor, we'd love to just start with getting to know a little bit about you, starting with maybe your astrology. We'd love to know. I know we're talking about human design, but just for context and also because more things that we love to geek out on. So we'd love to know your sun, moon, and rising, if you know.
I do. I'm a Leo sun, I'm a Scorpio rising, and I'm an Aquarius moon.
I love all of that. I'm a Leo sun also, an Aquarius
Love.
rising. So I love that. And
How does that resonate with you, Taylor?
yeah, tell me.
Me, so you'd be shocked actually working in human design, you'd be shocked at how little I know about astrology. So, astrology, if people are familiar with human design, there's an aspect of astrology that is weaved into human design. So, people almost assume that I know everything about astrology as well. Jenna's the one that astrology was her first love. So, she's like my go-to astrologer. So, she knows everything about my chart, but I think I resonate with like the base level of what I know about that. I know my Aquarius moon for sure I resonate with. And then what I first figured out that the rising is actually more how like how you present to the world, right? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah,
Um,
your motivation for life, how people see you.
right,
Yeah.
right. And to know that there's like a difference between that, I think it's very similar to the way people come to human design where they think there's just this one layer of, oh, I'm a Leo.
Mhm.
And then underneath that, there's like layers and layers and layers of like the intricacies of how you function. Um, I just don't know the layers of astrology. I know the layers of human design.
Well, more synchronicities because that's Michelle. Like I'll call her
Really?
about she's very well adept at the astrology and knowing those things. And it is really cool because the more I talk about astrology and I'm in my chart, I'll be like, "Oh, there's the Virgo rising in my human design.
Yes,
That there's where it's at."
exactly.
Yeah.
So what's funny is that we have that in common is because in our human design, we're both what we call a 3-5 profile, which your profile is your personality. And it's also how you learn and how you come to understand life. And so for me and Allie, we learn by experiencing things in our real life. And so we really would only make sense of astrology if we were applying it in our life. And I just have never dove into it. It's not something like there's so much information to be known there. I'm not someone that's going to like dive in and consume all that information. Whereas human design, there's like a natural interest and inclination towards the information for me. It's like a fascination of mine. And so when something is hyper fascinating to someone like me, there's other layers that are different in my chart versus Allie's, but if there's something that's hyper fascinating to something like someone like me, then I get all consumed by it. And human design just happens to be the modality. There's so many spiritual modalities that you could learn about yourself. This just happens to be the modality that clicked in my brain.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I also think that the people who weave astrology and human design together, I look at them kind of like that meme of the woman with the like math equations on the chart
Yes.
because I think I want to know that, but I'm a 5'2", so there's this I feel like with the two line, I feel like it feels really overwhelming to just, there's things that just come really naturally, and those are the
Mm-hmm.
things I'll lead with, or and so I always say, like, one day, just not today. One day, maybe I'm going to get really excited about that and I'm going to want to learn it all, or I'm just going to want to immerse
Mm-hmm.
myself or something, but I don't feel the urge to because it's really daunting. But anyway, so I want to
Mm-hmm.
know more about your human design,
Okay.
maybe your energy type, all of the I call it like the big three, like we do in
Yeah.
astrology, but those aspects of your human
Yeah, that
design.
it is the big three. It's our version of the big three, which is your energy type and your profile, which is what I just mentioned, and your authority.
Okay.
So my energy type is called projector. There's 5 energy types if you're listening, and one of them is called a projector. And we are people who we're meant to sort of observe life and spot things that sort of stand out to us. We spot almost like improvements is a good way of putting it, tweaks. We're and that when I first learned about it, what's funny about projectors is like that's not a really common way of being. Like I think our world is very do, get things done. It's a very, especially in the US, it's like a very fast-paced achiever sort of dynamic energy. And projectors are very much the best analogy is like a sitting on a like a bird sitting on a branch looking down at the rest of the animals and going, "Oh, hey, if you want to get from here to there faster, I can see the route that you should take." That's sort of the energy that we're meant to approach life with, and that was very, very, very different than the way that I was behaving when I first learned my human design. I was very much behaving like a manifesting generator, which I believe is what Michelle is.
And I love that description, Taylor, just because a lot of it, as you know, like my party trick is pulling out my human design app and sitting in the
Hmm.
corner with people. And
Yeah.
how many people, when they learn their projectors, are like, I don't project. So your definition, thank you for providing that as well.
Yeah. And also, we're a lot of us, when we first come to human design, we don't resonate with our type because there's more like even just the percentage of manifesting generators or generators that exist in the world compared to the number of projectors. There's so many more manifesting generators and generators. And so we're surrounded by them, and we, throughout our life, kind of by osmosis, start behaving that way. And so even when we come to this information, we read it and we're like, that's not me, but I would love for it to be me. It's this little inkling inside of us that's like
Yeah.
a permission to behave differently because we're exhausted trying to keep
Yeah.
up with you guys.
Yeah.
Totally. Well, and I wonder if I mean, obviously you couldn't really know, but I would wonder how many people you meet that are projectors and any of the energy types that act the exact opposite because that's just like such deep condition. My husband's a projector and I feel like just like with myself, you have these like daily reminders, little snippets that you of things that you memorize to just kick yourself back into what is real versus what you've learned to do for so long. But his
Hmm.
is just constantly going, like productivity
Yep.
is, and wanting to do all the things. And so we're always having this conversation of like, and also your gifts are to really have that unique perspective and that bird's eye view. And so we're always like over the dinner table asking like, well, what about this experience when you did this? Do you see how you were
Hmm.
able to be so much more effective and how much better you felt and how much more energy you freed up to do other things? But I at least I witness it just observing him. I see it all the time. It's like a constant push and pull of wanting to do more or like
Hmm.
work really hard to achieve the success if I'm using human design terms too.
Well, I was going to say what's funny is you're pointing out the fact that it's so easy for you to spot that in someone like him because when there's something called a sacral inside of us, it's part of the chakra system as well. So the sacral center is productivity and that like pushing and being able to like achieve energy. Um, when you're a projector, someone like me, that is what we call undefined. And so we pick up on, we're going to talk about emotions later, but it's um, this same sort of thing applies to all the different centers. When that's open, you pick up on the productivity energy of the people around you and you magnify it. So we're actually even more we could be a more what's the word I'm looking for? We can be a better manifesting generator than a manifesting generator if we apply
Yes,
ourselves in the moment. If we're around you,
100%.
we can rev ourselves up so much and get more done than you can, but it's going to affect us negatively. Whereas for you, it's just your standard. It's just your normal baseline. For us, it's like an addiction kind of
Yes.
feeling.
Oh my gosh, it's so like hearing you say that about like it just I'm laughing so hard because I always say to my husband, I'm like, it's not a competition. We
Hmm.
said this, I said this in
Feels
our
like it to
wedding
us.
vows. Yeah. And I'm like, it's not even when we got married in my vows, I was like, it's not a competition because he worked really, really hard. And but it's just I love that. I love your language. It's so just, again, I think we mentioned we're talking about everything but non-emotional and emotional, but there's so much
Which we expected.
which
We
I
knew this would
love.
happen.
That's
Yeah.
exactly it. And but I think Allie, you put in the notes Taylor's Incarnation Cross. And I remember, and I'm totally veering off, but I think the first episode I ever listened to that you were on, you talked about your right angle cross of explanation and how you really have a natural gift for making things really easy to understand and accessible. Am I saying
Yeah.
that right? Yeah. And
Hmm.
so it makes sense that every time you say something and just kind of like reflect it back, I'm like, oh yeah, that I see it like it lands even harder if that makes any sense. So
Yeah.
Real quick, just I was pointing out earlier that Michelle's husband is a 3-5 also, Taylor, and
Oh,
and an
wow. It's a
emotional
3-5 person.
authority. So it's
Wow.
like
Okay.
it is really cool as a 3-5 too, because Michelle and I will talk about all of these things
yeah.
just to learn even more about it. So
Well,
Right.
and I also wonder how much of the fifth line comes into play with your design, right? Being a projector, a 3-5, open emotion, or I'm sorry, emotional authority, and there's that projection field of feeling like I can do it, like I can do the thing, I can come save the day, or I can fix this for you, and maybe not discerning necessarily where you have the energy for it. But I would imagine that for someone with a 3-5 profile, maybe it's even more intense, I guess. That's what I see,
Yeah.
anyways.
No, for sure. So I have actually I'm not emotional authority. I'm called splenic authority. So the three
Oh,
things
okay.
that for people that are listening, because one of my favorite things is to not make things feel confusing to people, is the three things that we're talking about if you're looking at your chart are still the energy type, which is how we apply our energy. Her your husband, did you say?
Hmm.
Michelle's husband is the same energy type as me. Then there's the profile, which is the personality, which Allie, her husband, and I share the same personality. But because we have different energy types, that iterates very, very differently. And then the third thing is the authority, which is how we make decisions. So Allie and Michelle's husband both have the same way that they make decisions. But again, because of the different aspects of their chart, it iterates slightly differently. So the way I make decisions is different. It's called splenic authority.
Hmm.
And so mine is very quick hits. So what you're saying is that what she's pointing out to is there's the numbers that are in our profile. So in mine, the first one is a 3, which is the experimenter, and the second number is a 5, which is someone who really likes to save the day, who wants to come to the rescue. We're problem solvers, challenge solvers. But what she's saying is, as a projector, it's really important for me to be clear about which days I'm supposed to save, because just because I'm capable of saving the day doesn't mean that I'm actually supposed to. We're supposed to use our authority, which is how we make decisions, to discern which days are mine to save. And yes, to answer your question, it's I wouldn't say extra difficult, but I think that there's like layers and layers that your chart creates, and you can sort of start to see, oh, that's interesting that as a projector I really want to be seen and recognized for the things that I'm capable of. And with that 5 in my profile, I want to be seen as someone that can fix things for people. So we kind of get like double whammy on that.
Yeah.
But it's so important that we're invited, me and your husband, invited to actually save someone's day. That invitation has to be there, or else it's like an overexertion of our energy. So when we try to save the day and someone is really like, for example, I'll give you like a really practical example. In a relationship, you're in a relationship with a 3-5 projector. So probably like being in a relationship with me.
Learning a
So,
lot today.
yeah. So he's coming to me, my husband will come to me with, he's just wanting to vent about his day. It is, and I imagine your husband feels this way. It is like tying my hands behind my back, taping my mouth shut to try to not fix this man's problems. Because sometimes, as you probably know, you just want to vent. You just want to
Yeah.
talk about your day. But for us, with that need to fix things, solve things, want to be the person that saw the improvement for you, it's literally physically painful for us to keep our mouth shut and just let you
Yeah.
vent. So yes, to answer your question, it is very difficult. But what I've learned is that urge to want to fix is because it feels so good when we're able to.
Hmm.
But that feel good feeling doesn't come unless the invitation is there and unless my decision making mechanism, which is my splenic authority, says, yes, this is yours, jump in. Um, I get the full experience, the full like goodness and filling me up with um, what happened when I was able to save that person's day. When that invitation is not there and when it's not my day, even though I'm capable of it, the feeling is flat. And so I don't get what I want to get from it, and that person doesn't get what they are needing. So over time I've learned that it's actually just not worth it for either party. So
Yeah.
with experience, it's become more natural to only save the days that are mine.
Yeah. And I think just from your example, um, in those moments when it does all kind of line up in the right ways, we're so much closer, and or like
Yep.
the experience is more connected versus me feeling like resistant and totally
Mm-hmm.
like, don't tell me what to do, don't tell me how to
Yep.
live my life. And so as in purely in relationship, any relationship, platonic, romantic, whatever, I feel like, yeah, it just you just connect deeper and you feel
Mm-hmm.
more. There's much more appreciation, all of the good things.
How did you start connecting with your splenic authority? How does that show up for you?
Okay, so I'm glad you asked. Because I think when people read about splenic authority, they feel that it's so difficult. What do you mean? It's this quiet voice that only speaks once with no explanation. It's to me, I go like this whenever I talk about it because it feels like just like a snap. It feels like it comes sort of like in this area. I don't know why. Maybe that's not the same for everybody because the spleen's down here. So I'm not sure why it's happening up here for me. But I started using it on really small things at first for like a month. So I learned about human design in 2016 on a podcast, and it was the Almost 30 podcast, and they were interviewing Jenna Zoe, who I now work with. This was 3 years before I met her and 5 years before I started working with her. So I heard her voice long before I even knew her. Um, so when I heard about it, I was at this point that things were not working out in my life. I felt like everything I did was like walking through mud as far as my career, my relationships, just everything in life. And it wasn't a rock bottom, I would say, but I was definitely at a point where I was like, I'm willing to try anything. This thing is telling me to behave in a different way than I've been currently behaving. I have nothing to lose. Literally, I have nothing to lose. My career was not where I wanted. I barely had any money. I was in student loan debt up to my ears. Like, I was willing to try anything. And so, a lot of times when people find out about this thing called an authority, which is how we're designed to make decisions, they're afraid to make decisions in a different way than they have been because maybe they have evidence that they've made good decisions in the past. I didn't feel that way. So I just went full force and tried to hear it, tried to listen for it. So first I would try on things like, even driving in a parking lot, which lane should I turn down to get a parking spot? Or which coffee should I order? Or just really small things. And then the big one that came within a month of me learning about this and something else about me. I, in my chart, I'm an extreme person. I'm very extreme. So I'm someone that is willing to jump off the deep end of something and fully risk and then figure out my lessons from it and then be able to come and go, hey, guys, here's what I got from what I did. Because, not all of us are willing to do that. And that's okay. Not everyone is supposed to do that. I'm capable of it. And so I dive headfirst into things. I didn't know that about myself at the time, but that's just how I function. And so I was living with my now husband, but we had been dating for, I think, 2 or 3 years. I can't remember. I'm so bad at remembering that stuff. And I went to visit a friend in LA. We were living together in Arizona. Went to visit a friend in LA, and I had this splenic hit, which was move to LA. No explanation, nothing. It was just this like visceral knowing. It's a knowing. It's a intuition, and it's pure, 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 pure intuition. And I went home and I said to my boyfriend at the time, I need to move to LA. And he said, well, we're not getting married right now. We're not having kids right now. If you're ever going to do it, now's the time. And if you don't do this, I don't want you to end up like resenting me in the future. And so I packed up my stuff a couple months later and I moved to LA. And that happened to be where I met Jenna. Like I became close with who are now Jenna and I's mutual friends and who ultimately introduced us to each other. And so to answer your question, how did I get acquainted with it? I jumped off the deep end. I risked, I took a big risk with it and it paid off. And I'm not saying that everybody has to do that. It really does, for most people, to start with the really, really small things. But as someone that is capable of jumping off the deep end, I can tell you it's worth it on the other side. I've tested it. I've experimented with it for the last 7 or 8 years.
She's 3'5". Listen to her. She knows. She's lived it.
Trust me, I've
Yeah.
experimented with almost every single aspect of my life.
So that was kind of, I think, because that was the journey that led you to this work. Are there any other details in that story that you feel called to share?
Okay, the thing that's coming to me unexpectedly is that when it comes to listening to your authority, the steps that you take, you still won't be able to necessarily understand or grasp why they are, I wouldn't say the path of least resistance, but the path, the quickest, they say that the quickest route between 2 points is a straight line, right? I believe that the authority is the straight path. It is the thing that it's like the compass that keeps you on the straight line between where you are and where you want to go. And so, even though there's points in between where my authority told me, start a podcast. This was a podcast that was not the podcast that Jenna and I do now. Do this, do that, move here, move home. Like, I was supposed to be in LA for a year. 6 months in, spleen was done. Move home. I had nothing at that point. I had nothing to show for
What
it.
about breaking your lease and all of those
All of those
logistical,
things. It
the
just, I just knew
logical?
exactly.
Yeah.
I sublet my apartment. I did all of these, a lot of the decisions that my spleen has told me to make were completely illogical to me. But now I look back and every single one of them had to happen because, the podcast that I started in 2018 that lost me my job. Yeah, I lost my job after starting it because my boss at the time wasn't okay with me doing something outside of work. The podcast that didn't really go anywhere, but it developed my skills now, I know, because the moment that Jenna said, I want to do a podcast and I want you to be on it with me, I was ready. I'd already done this before. This was a
Mhm.
skill I'd already exercised because there was no audience when I had my previous one, like maybe 200 downloads per episode. And then when I obviously was coming to speak in front of an audience that was used to someone who was speaking in front of audience, I had to be ready. And so thank God I listened to my authority back then because I was prepared for when that opportunity came.
So beautiful. Michelle and I, in our process, we can get, she's got that 2 and I've got the 3. And so, as even just learning all of the things of the logistics of how we make this podcast run, there are just times where I'm like, I know, Michelle, I know I need to, like, it's going to take me longer, but sometimes it's just so frustrating because you can just do it so quick and you get it. But it's a beautiful journey. And again, that speaks to really feeling aligned to have this partnership because, I think most of the time Michelle she doesn't get offended by that. She knows, that her ease can sometimes hit on my insecurities, but it's also my design. And so she also can remind me and lift me back up to remind me of those things. So,
Oh,
yeah.
gosh. Though knowing the other person, I don't know if you found this, Allie, because you're hitting on something that is an insecurity for people who have our profile, is that it maybe does take us sometimes longer to figure things out. Or not necessarily longer, but it just sometimes the way that, for example, Michelle, things maybe just make sense to you quickly. Like I always, so my husband is a 2-4, so he also has a 2. So I'm surrounded by people who have 2s as a 3-5. And it almost like he looks at something in a quick snapshot picture and he's like, got it. And I'm like, huh? What do you mean you got it? Jenna does the
All due
same.
respect, how?
I don't,
Yeah.
it truly, like, Jenna and I have had so many conversations over. I always joke that, like, what took her a month to learn about human design has taken me 7 years because there's things that she says to me that I've then experienced them in my real life. And all of a sudden, maybe you guys have had this experience where it just resonates through your whole body all of a sudden. And I'll come to her and I'd be like, that's what you've been saying? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, got it. I got it now. I got it now.
Mhm.
But there is the insecurity there of like, oh man, like, how come I have to figure things out that way? But I'm sure Michelle also has where it's not that quick understanding doesn't happen with everything, which is probably frustrating because you wish it happened with everything.
Yeah, yeah. And even just the desire to, like, witnessing Allie's desire to want to turn things inside out and really go deep on things, and then being like, well, why don't, like, either one, like, why don't I care more, and I'm like saying quotations because it's not that I don't care, but right, there's other more stories, right? But also just like where's my desire to like want to really learn this thing and explain it, but sometimes I need to just like let it pass me by, and if it comes back around, then I'm gonna either I really really get it and it's gonna click right away. But love that snapshot view. I also love what you said about the straight line being the authority, just to go back to that, because I feel like it's just such a beautiful representation of human design in general, of how, again, like permission to be exactly who you are, because the straight line looks totally different for all of us, but your straight line is exactly how you're meant to do it. And I love that. I like wrote that down, because it's such a beautiful, more ways to just continue to like validate yourself in your own process, and continue to keep like, instead of relying, I coach people as well one-on-one, and I think we're always looking for language of how do you turn it inwards versus constantly like comparing yourself to everything and everyone. And the other thing that came up was just, I think when you intentionally choose partnerships or working partnerships, whatever it is, like you and Jenna Zoe and Allie and I think when you go into those intentionally choosing to work and be with someone who does show up totally opposite in so many different ways, it's so beautiful because you're like running towards the, unconditioning or deconditioning all of the things, and it's not the easy route all the time, but it's so so rewarding, and I couldn't imagine doing life any other way now. We always talk about how once you learn the thing, you can't ever unsee it, and that's how I feel about human design. Like you just can't see it. Like you, even though you may not be able to embody it right away or even put it all into practice, just seeing it starts to shift everything. You take the, I think I was listening to your podcast and she talks a lot about taking the glasses off, and it's so true. I love that. So let's talk about emotional and
Let's jump into it.
non-emotional. But really quickly, if you had to describe human design, just, and again, we're like 40 minutes in and I'm like, what's human design? But I mean, if you like, we've talked about it a ton, but especially just the way that you explain things, what is like the kind of, yeah, I don't know, blanket statement that you would
Hmm.
describe human design as?
I would say that it's a way, it's an outside system that kind of gives you a snapshot of your natural self in really, really plain words, because I think it's pretty common knowledge that we're not all always behaving as our natural selves. But it's like a compass. It's this sort of, okay, if this is how I'm designed to behave, it explains how your energy functions, how you're designed to make decisions, how your personality works, how your emotions function, how the way you're designed to eat, the way the things that you're supposed to be motivated by, the lens through which you're supposed to view the world. It's how you develop your genius. There's all these layers of like your natural self that can feel very overwhelming and complicated, but it's a system that says this is you. As long as you try to, in incremental ways, lean into this, you're gonna see everything in the outside world fall into place more easily, I guess is the best word.
Yeah, that's great. Especially the try part, right? Like if you're just
Yeah.
trying to be yourself, right? I
We're
think,
never gonna be 100%.
yeah, yeah, I love that. Cool. So, emotional, non-emotional. We just really wanted to talk about this topic with you because it's something that comes up literally, I don't know, every single day in conversation. It's always kind of just, I mean, it's always present. I'm a non-emotional. I'm completely open, and Allie is an emotional authority as well. And so it's fun to witness, even showing up on camera. I mean, on Zoom, and like, and before we even get into it, but I feel like I can pick up even through literally digitally. I'm like, oh, like you can feel something, and it's such a practice. So I think it's really important to just like always talk about this topic, or just find new ways to be more aware and start to, I don't know, for me anyways, like release some of the stories and the like weight of carrying things that just totally don't belong to you. It's like better for relationships. It's better for confidence,
Hmm.
for sleep. I don't know. The list goes on, but
It feels like there's a lot of stories that you can tell yourself. Like even
yeah.
before I knew about the emotional and non-emotional, just societal norms around emotions or not having emotions, right? And so it really is, we did our intro with authority and energies, and this really felt like the natural next place. I think you and Jenna talked about it as, the differences are as extreme as like men and women, and extreme is probably too
No,
extreme of a
it,
word, but
no, it is extreme.
so give us some insight, Taylor, into like why this component really is so impactful, or what you're feeling called to share out of the gate about emotional and non-emotional.
I think what's interesting about emotions is that it is something that has always kind of been this like hidden thing. We're kind of, keep them to yourself. Don't be too emotional. Don't make decisions with your like emotions. All those things have been ingrained in us. I think I would say, and maybe you guys agree, I think a little bit of that's breaking now. I think it's becoming a little bit more okay to express that. And it's just funny to me that we live in a world that says keep it to yourself, but knowing that every single one of us is having this like extremely colorful experience of emotions. How in the hell are we supposed to keep that to ourselves? So, what Ali just said, how there's such an extreme difference between the two ways that we experience emotions. We don't all experience emotions in the same way. I think even just that is we could talk about just that for an hour. But there's two ways according to human design. The first is called non-emotional, which is what Michelle is and what I am, which means that the emotional center in our chart, which if you're looking at your chart, it's the bottom right triangle. If that center is white, you are open and receptive to the emotions that you experience or to the emotions that are around you. And if it's colored in, then you're like Ali. That emotional center is defined. You have a defined emotional wave that you experience throughout your life. Emotions are a very consistent companion for you. You're very familiar with them, they're yours, and you're really only experiencing your emotions. Whereas Michelle and I are experiencing the emotions of every single person that we come into contact with. So that's a very different experience of emotions. Is there anything specific that you want me to clarify about them?
Just really thinking through maybe examples. I know you have some great analogies that you can use as well to help people understand the difference.
Let's maybe start with the emotionals. So the people who have a defined emotional wave. So I mentioned color. I love this explanation of I love this way of describing it because emotions do color our life. Without emotions, everything is neutral, right? Of course, we have thoughts, we can make meanings, but truly, meanings that we make about situations are coming from our emotions. So with no emotion involved in anything, we're all just kind of robots walking around going about our day. So thank goodness that we have emotionals who, for example, when Allie wakes up in the morning, she doesn't know how she's going to feel. She doesn't know the emotions that she's going to be experiencing when she wakes up because the universe is her DJ. God, whatever you want to call it, whoever you think is the creator or not the
Force,
creator,
intention.
whatever. It doesn't matter what you want to call it or what you think it is. Something is essentially giving her this wave of emotion. So sometimes she can wake up and feel really melancholy, or sometimes she can wake up and she can feel like, I imagine Elle Woods when Perfect Day is playing when she wakes up. Like sometimes you wake up and you feel that way. And you're just meant to sort of that's the lens through which you're meant to experience your day. And honestly, sometimes you can wake up and you can feel low, and then halfway through the day, you're feeling high again. It's sort of this just sort of not roller coaster. I would say I don't think everyone experiences it as a roller coaster, but it is sort of like a wave that you're riding. And fighting against that wave is actually what I think makes emotions more difficult to experience. Because when you're just experiencing the wave as an emotional ally, maybe you can speak to this, like there's something right about it. There's something that feels, ooh, I do want to be feeling this right now, even though it might feel inconvenient. For example, Jenna, my co-host, she's an emotional, and when she met Allie, there was a talk that she was giving and she woke up and she felt in an emotional low. And at first she wanted to fight against it because she was like, okay, I'm supposed to be giving a talk today. I should be bubbly Jenna. I should be happy Jenna. And then because she's had years and years of learning to trust this, she just went with it. And she said, you know what, this is the feeling that I'm in. And I think probably watching her, you could see this. She was in such a in her feels mood that day, and it brought exactly what she needed to bring to those conversations. I was so proud of her. There's no there's no way the emotional state that you're in is ever going to be wrong for you. It's exactly what your soul needs in that moment. It's exactly the sort of color of lenses that you're meant to be experiencing that moment through. And that's beautiful. And learning that is like it's going to give you the intel that you need from that moment.
Well, I'll be honest because I often will be like, "Oh, good for you, Michelle, non-emotional," and
You've never been one before.
I know, be careful what you wish for, right? But
Yeah.
I've had a very, I mean, in simplistic terms, like not a positive relationship with my emotions. And this stems back, to childhood. And, my life coach 10 years ago is like, you don't breathe, right? And that was a defense mechanism from life and all things. And so you think about it, that's been a big aha for me is like,
Mm.
I'm also an emotional authority. I'm supposed to be feeling, and the majority of my life, I've been numbing myself to my emotions. Also, we talked at another podcast. There was this like inside joke with my dad and I of like, oh, your sister's just being a little sensitive. And that was kind of like our bonding thing. But as a little kid, you're like, ooh, no sensitivity to bond with dad. And it wasn't malintended. And again, just I think the last couple of years have been like grief, and there's been a lot of trauma and heaviness, and just people's reactions and stories that some can put on those highs and low. That's been my work. And, having this conversation and learning more about it and having people in my life like Michelle who really hold space for it and let me talk through it, only like the last month or two, I've really been like, you're having a low, you don't know. Also, I have that addiction to productivity. I mean, I'm a generator too. So like do, or like, do to fix things, like what can I do?
Hmm.
And sometimes I think even Michelle, yesterday, you were just saying like, maybe I'll do my work from the couch. And there have been some days where I'm like, yeah, maybe it is just sitting on the couch instead of at your desk standing, right? And just mellowing out. So that's kind of been my experience. I'm trying to really understand my wave more. And a question I had for you, because I was listening to not yours, but another podcast where she's an emotional authority and she's also a 3-5, but she was talking about the 37-40 gate. And I don't know if
Mm.
and how, and it really resonated because she said it was almost like this tick tick. That's how because my whole life I've always kind of been like, I just let things go. I just let it go, let it go, let it go. And then all of a sudden it's like the beast comes out, like roar.
Mm.
And then Jenna on your podcast was talking about how she has more of a subtle way, a
Hmm.
subtle wave, excuse me. So I'm wondering if you
Yeah.
have insight to just the extremes of the waves for emotion.
Mm. Okay, so I want to point out one thing you said too, where, because I said earlier, like we've been taught not to make decisions with our emotions. So Allie actually is supposed to make decisions with her emotional authority. And the thing is that she will have this experience of lows and experience of high emotional states, but she's meant to only make decisions when she's in a neutral state. And I'm sure that I can understand that that might feel frustrating to people because we are kind of in a world that wants us to make quick decisions. But what's beautiful about that is that when you're in a low, you're seeing life through that lens. And when you're in a high, you're seeing life through that lens. And then you come to this neutral emotional state and you're able to make a clear decision. Um, and there's also timing involved in that. The wave is extremely intelligent in that it knows the moment the decision. I guess that's not the right way to say it. It knows. The right way to say is that it's going to give you that moment of clarity only at the moment that is the proper moment to make that decision. So there also should be some trust involved in that of like, I don't need to make a decision before I have absolute neutral emotional clarity over this decision. So I want to point that out. And the other question is you were talking about the intensity of the emotional wave. So, yes, there's even like anything in life, there's anything in human design, especially, there's also nuance within the wave. Not everybody has the same wave. All the emotionals are not riding the same actual wave in the ocean. You know, there's as many waves as there are waves in the ocean. So what you're saying is that there are people who have the experience of you could be going through life and nothing is really affecting you. It's just like, oh, whatever, brush it off, brush it off. Then that moment will come where like your coffee is cold when you, I don't know, this is a stupid example. I'm just looking at my coffee right now. And
Yeah.
it's cold and you're like, oh, I didn't finish it in time. And then you just have a full mental breakdown
I don't
over a
think that's
coffee.
stupid at all. I
Yeah.
think it's
No.
a great example of
I
how
was like,
like there's sometimes you can laugh of like, why does this piss me off so much?
Yeah.
Like,
And
you know?
it's not the coffee. It's almost like or it's like a buildup sometimes is that you're expressing the emotion of all the other coffees, all the other small things that you just hadn't been affected by. You're experiencing all of them in that moment. And that is okay. And
Mhm.
that's correct. And it's not crazy. And you're not losing your mind. And you're not off the rails. You're not an emotional wreck. Like, that's just how emotions function for emotionals. Not everybody. Like you said, Jenna has more of a subtle wave. So she will kind of like have it won't bother her and then one day it will. And then later in the day, the thing that bothered her early won't bother her. And it's like a little bit more subtle. But like my mom, for example, has definitely like an escalator where it's like she's like, oh, I'm feeling so good. I'm feeling so good. Crash. Yeah.
It is so funny. I was like, you can probably give examples of where you feel like you can feel my frustration with things that you're like, it's not a big deal.
I know.
That's
I was
probably why
like,
you're laughing, or with Keith, either or.
yeah, no, I'm so amused in all the good ways, in all the great ways.
Michelle, I had another question or a thought, but I saw you. Did you have,
No, I just felt like she was speaking to you in such beautiful ways and such a beautiful message that you really, and don't let me tell you what you need and what you don't need. But I feel like there were so many instances that, like, maybe even just like re-record that little snippet and then play it back to yourself when you feel like voice noting me and you're like, am I losing my mind? Am I crazy? And I'm like, no. And I'm always just like, I don't, now I'm, building my repertoire of human design language, but I'm always like, "Oh, just ride the wave." I'm always like, just ride the wave, just ride it out, and let's see what happens. Because that's just, again, like seeing each other because I am a non-emotional or open emotional. And so it
Yeah.
is easier to see it and to be able to, again, like to what Allie's saying, like hold that space because I'm not experiencing it in the same way. And and also I've gotten so much beautiful practice by, marrying someone with kind of an intense emotional wave. And, I hear stories about my husband, like from his parents of him as a child and how they would, and I'm like, oh, Emotional, emotional
Whoop, there
wave
it
at its
is.
finest. Yep. Even when they're like, yeah, when he was a baby, we'd have to like throw the food down and run because if he was hungry, then like we didn't want to get in the crossfire of him throwing food at us. And I'm like, he was a baby and he was doing that. And they're like, yeah, and we couldn't, we had to give him the same haircut his whole life. We never knew what his hair looked like because we were like, just get him in there and just get it done. And it makes me laugh, but it is really beautiful. And again, like human design, there's never it's like a never ending way of when you learn it for yourself, when you speak with people who are really, well versed in human design, because it's just such beautiful validation, again, like reflecting back to you of all the ways that everything that you feel so resistant for, but also is like such a solve, or like a balm to your soul in so many ways. It's just nice to like, I was just looking at Allie and I'm laughing and I'm like, and also like, this is such beautiful messaging for you because there are many, many times where you're like, I'm so sick of my emotions. I'm sick of this. I don't want to. And then
Like I'm
I'm,
exhausted. And I think
yeah,
also
yeah.
because I have that active brain too. I don't know how that comes to play,
Totally.
but I'm a quad left. So I just
Yeah.
sometimes I'll just be sobbing to Michelle. I'm just exhausted. And
Yeah.
what came up for me when you were talking about again that like really needing to be at a neutral place. Like when I had my big bang and it was like relationship, I like lost my life. Like I didn't have no job, no place to live, no nothing. And it's like and just how do you get in that place when you have to make
Mm,
so many big decisions and
mm.
being neutral? And I'm not making light of, but Michelle and I laugh a lot about things. But I'm like, to Michelle, I'm like, am I depressed or is this just my emotional wave? Or like, do I need to go on meds or is this my emotional wave? And I don't, have you guys talked about that? I want to, I feel like I've heard you guys talk about like the difference between mental health and emotional wave. So I don't want to put you on the spot, but
No, no, it's absolutely one of my favorite things to talk about. We don't really, we've only ever really talked about publicly, we've talked about my thoughts on ADD, Jenna as well, and like its correlation with the chart, but there's absolutely correlations. And I think the top line thing that I would say is that for me, this is not everyone's experience, but for me, a diagnosis that says you are this, that makes you feel as if something is wrong with the way that you function and something is off about you. And there's something that's different about you that is not the same as everybody else. And we can figure out a way to make you seem more and feel more like everyone else. That has never been, for me, it was not empowering. So a little bit of backstory. My mom knows I talk about this all the time, and I have absolutely no qualms about my mother taking me to a psychiatrist and diagnosing me with ADD. Like she was trying to do the best that she could with the information that she had. But when I was diagnosed, the word deficit in it of itself was like, oh, there's something wrong with me. I have to change myself in order to function in society. And to me, if I were to look at any spiritual modality, I know that that is a medical modality, but it's still a modality for understanding yourself. So that list of diagnoses that a psychiatrist or the medical field can give you, it's still a system for understanding how we function. And it should also be looked at in comparison with all the other systems that we have for understanding how we function. If a system makes you feel like something is wrong with you, it is not the right system for you. And I feel so deeply passionate about that. And for me, when I came to human design, I get a little emotional, not to talk about emotions, about it because for me, the way that this system spoke to my uniqueness was like a breath of fresh air of it's okay that I function this way. And also, it's okay that you function the way that you function. And it's okay that you function the way that you function. And that my mom functions different. And that my dad functions different. And that my brother functions different. And it just sort of clicked in my brain of like, what is this emotional state that all of us are supposed to be like, that's the healthy amount of emotions that you're supposed to experience? What's the healthy amount of focus that you're supposed to experience? What is this brain, this perfect
Mhm.
brain that we're all comparing ourselves to? There isn't one. Have you ever met anyone who wouldn't fall or qualify into a diagnosis? Never met one.
Yeah.
Everyone has one they could fall into. And
Mhm.
so, doesn't that make you just go, maybe there's something not wrong with me? Maybe there's something wrong with the way we're deciding we're all supposed to be behaving. And maybe there's unique ways that each of us behave.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
Thank
like,
you for sharing that. And I
yeah.
think that, human design has been an understanding that, and I'm comfortable sharing that at some point during this journey. My life coach had said, like, I think maybe you need to start thinking about if it's time to go on medication.
Mm.
And I had this full body, like, no, 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 right? And like it got to the point where she was like, I don't think you're hearing me. I'm not saying you need to go on medication, but there are like chemical things going on in brains sometimes. And I'm just saying like might be exploring it. And I explored it. And human design gave me a really good outlet to start thinking about my emotions and like why was I so scared? And there also was there's a lot of programming and all of those things
Mm-hmm.
outside of that, but also it's like, no, I haven't felt my emotions almost my whole life. And that's how I'm supposed to be making decisions. So I'm scared.
Mm-hmm.
But that gave me the language to start having vulnerable conversations. And ultimately, it doesn't matter where I landed if I went on or I didn't go on, but it was allowing me to have the conversations to get to more of a neutral place where I could make a decision whether that was medically a good path for me or not, as opposed to just saying, oh, call a psychiatrist, sign me up for the medication, right?
I will say too is that I'm not anti-medication. I'm not anti-diagnosis. I think that there's a time and a place for everyone. In the same way that this system might not resonate with everybody, that's totally fine. Go find something that does. Um, I also think that maybe there are times when maybe you would be in a state where medication would be the only thing that would get you out of a hole. And that's okay. Um, for me too, though, I think I'm more of like I take a holistic approach to everything. It's like I'm not interested in band-aids. I'm not interested in a quick solve for a problem. Although sometimes you need a band-aid, right?
Yeah.
But if I put a band-aid on, I want to know why the wound came in the first place.
Mhm.
And so going down to that base layer of like, how do I function? How am I resisting the way that I function? How is the world telling me that I need to function in a different way than my natural self? But like going down to that deep root of knowing that my natural self is exactly, I did not come here broken. I did
Mhm.
not come here missing anything that I need. I, it's just, it's just not, to me, not possible. And so you wouldn't be here if this wasn't exactly how you were supposed to be here. And so learning that exact way, and, you know, I'm not even saying that human design is the absolute end all be all perfect explanation. I think in all of human history, humans have sought for ways to explain our experience. Coming from someone who is, my purpose in life is explanation. That is what I came here to do. I sought explanations. I sought, for me, my biggest fascination is how humans function. And to this is a system that to me, I feel explains it to the point where we are capable of at this moment in time.
Yeah.
It's only at this point like a 40-year-old system. It came in the last 40 years. And so we're also like you're saying, like I'm having a hard time, accepting that I'm supposed to embrace my emotions. Dude, we're the experimental level of even learning to accept this about ourselves. Like
Yeah.
we're in the trenches on humans starting to understand how individual we function. Because up until now, it's been a lot of needing train tracks to walk, like to run on. because there was so all possibilities is very overwhelming of how to like if there's all possibilities are open for how humans can function, that's very overwhelming. Like no race or being is going to come in and just plop into existence and go, you can behave any way that you want.
Mhm.
That's terrifying. We're
Yeah.
gonna, it's like we got to figure out together what it means to be a human. And so there was these tracks that got created for us that were very beneficial, but we're at this literal cusp in humanity, in the shift in the way that our race, I would say, functions, that is like about to blow the cap off of those train tracks and say, you don't need them anymore. That's terrifying. And so just know that it's okay if you're still fumbling your way through that. I'm still fumbling my way through that.
Yeah, I don't want to start crying. I like got shivers all of me. I'm like, yeah, it's just it's been a journey. And again, it's meeting souls like you and having these conversations, being in partnership with Michelle is exactly why we wanted to start this podcast. And I often say to people, like, I don't care if we get 0 listeners, because selfishly, I feel like I'm growing so much in this
Yeah.
where I'm meant to be. And gosh, I think the right people will find it and find the messaging when they're meant to. And thank you just for articulating that, because I think, again, human design isn't the end all be all for everybody and it won't speak to everybody. But I definitely wanted to share how having the language and understanding myself, my chart is like a breath of fresh air for me sometimes, that it gave me, oh, why am I having this reaction? And so that ultimately I could make the best decision for myself.
Right.
Michelle, thoughts, or should we give some non-emotionals love?
I
Yeah.
was gonna say that you brought up, Michelle, that I think one of the first things that you said in your partnership is that you experience in relationship to her emotions, you feel like you're learning to hold space for them.
Mhm.
Okay. So as a non-emotional, we do feel what Allie is feeling.
Mhm.
It's like the textbook definition of an empath. Okay.
Yeah.
Just because I just want to caveat, that doesn't mean that Allie is not empathic at all. She just is not empathic specifically in the area of emotions.
Mhm.
She experiences only her emotions. Whereas Michelle and I are actually like the definite, like textbook empath, where that is sometimes confronting because if you can feel Allie's emotions, there's a story that happens inside of us of making it about us, of, oh, I did something wrong. Allie's mad at me. What did I do wrong? It's like putting it on us because we aren't clear that those emotions for her are not tied to anything
Mhm.
in her life. Like emotionals, like Allie can often think if I'm feeling low, I need to find something in my life that is making me feel this way. No, that's
Mhm.
just the song that the life DJ of life is playing for her today. So for us, it's not taking that personally.
Yeah.
And when you do take it personally, it's really difficult to hold because when Michelle and I feel Allie's emotions, what Allie is feeling as a 2, like let's say like a negative like a bad feeling emotion out of she's feeling as a 2 out of 10 because that's her normal. She's used to that. That's just like emotions are her baseline. She's feeling it as a 2. We feel Allie's low 2 emotion as a 7. We magnify it so it hits us and we're like, what's wrong with
Yeah.
you? You know, that can be sort of
Sorry.
yeah, it's don't say
No,
sorry.
I know.
Like,
I mean, just a little bit.
of course, but let's caveat that with emotions are what also make life enjoyable. Emotions are what make life full, what make like colorful.
Mhm.
So but removing this almost like stigma around the experience of emotions, of that there's something wrong with experiencing emotions, let's take that out of the equation and just go, oh, that's interesting. I feel the way that Ali's feeling right now. For us, that's data.
Yeah.
But what we do is we take it on and we feel like we have to like do something like it's like I
Mhm.
have to do something with these emotions for me because it's different for each of our personalities. Michelle, you also have we were talking alluding earlier to having a 5 in your personality profile,
Mhm.
which is someone that likes to save the day, so you also have that inside of you. And so what we can tend to do is want to fix that. We kind of are, well, how do I solve this for you? No, She's just experiencing that.
Yeah.
And for us, it's just data. Oh, interesting. Allie's in a low emotional state right now, which means that she's probably not going to be ready to make decisions. The way that she feels about things isn't going to be the same as maybe how she'll feel about it later. So like, let's just let her be in her thing.
Yeah.
Let her be in it and be okay with it. Let me just taste it. Like taste her butt. Like do like, like when people do like that, lick their finger and feel the wind.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. That's how she's feeling. Cool. Flush it out. Not
Yeah.
mine.
Yeah. And so many things flashed up. I think in my personal experience in romantic partnerships has been the most glaring because things are so much more personal. And so I feel like it's been such a practice area for me of just like not like just everyday life living with an emotional authority and someone who does, I think I anyways observe, has quite an emotional intense, or maybe further down the intensity scale of the wave. And it is, one, it was just like in the beginning and for the first several years it was a lot. We were my husband and I were long distance for so long, so it was kind of like I had so much space, and we were younger and we were going through different phases of our lives in general. But then as we started to live together, it was like, it was that constant of like, what am I always feeling like I need to correct something, or what did I do? And then, human design, of course, is really, really helped in that way. And so I noticed so much more that in partnerships with people or when I'm around other emotional authorities, I think because of my relationship with my husband, it's been so much clearer. It's so beautiful. And also, of course, there's the other layers of other practices, right? I think of like Dr. Joe Dispenza's the energy clearing meditation, right? Like that is something that even though the whole 45 minutes or however long isn't necessarily something I can do all the time, but even just that knowledge so that I can like visualize sometimes my like in my head, I just picture the little triangle like cleaning it out. And so having those tools is it's necessary, it's vital for living life, and not because and on the flip side of it, and maybe I'll just kind of like throw my jumbled thoughts together and you can
Yeah.
do what you do.
Mhm.
But I think
Yeah.
about my upbringing where I experienced a lot of a very tumultuous upbringing with someone with a lot of intense super Scorpio energy in their lives, and
Mm.
maybe the more shadow aspects that we associate with Scorpio in that way. And I think in terms of like being a really intense person, and not having any ability to regulate any emotions, and really and being at the detriment of me growing up, right? So I say all that because I learned at a really young age to compartmentalize and to go and be one version of myself that is like very cheerful and happy to the out in the world, and then to like really separate. And so I don't know how this plays into, but I've always looked at it as um, one, it helped me survive for many, many years. And then it wasn't so supportive as I started healing, because I was like, actually, that hurts to want to separate those parts of myself and to hide the things that don't feel good. And then as I evolved, it starts to feel like, okay, I see where this in the right way, maybe in the right frequency of like an intention, is actually such a superpower, because I don't have to get so absorbed in these emotions and I can also witness them. Does any of this make sense? I'm like
Yep.
trying to take you on
Yep.
the, but I think
Absolutely.
you got where I'm going with it. But
Yep.
and just viewing the way you showed up, the way you process things differently at different points in your life, and seeing how it really helped you, how it no longer was helpful and you needed to move on from that kind of survival mode, to now, I feel really, really good for the most part. Like, I know certain things about myself. When I walk into a room, I'm always confronted and I need to like observe and not engage into anything. Otherwise, I'm going to be overwhelmed. I know that,
Mm.
there are certain areas I can't eat. Like, that's a whole other can of worms. But
Mm.
I don't eat a lot because I have this, when I go into spaces, because I'm like, I can't. I'm too distracted. There's too much I'm taking in. First of all, like,
Mm.
not to throw even more layers, but my strongest sense is feeling, right? So there's all these layers, but the emotional and the energetics of it is like I've had a lot of practice. And so it feels good. It feels empowering to be like, okay, I cannot take this personal, but again, back to like the romantic partnerships, those are the areas where I think I have to work the hardest,
Mm.
to let it be. Just let them ride. Like with Ali, I'm like, yeah, ride the wave. It's not me. It's
Yeah.
not, we're all
Yeah.
good.
It's not tied to my major life decisions.
Yeah, yeah. So anyways, I'll let you
Yeah.
kind of reflect.
So what Michelle's alluding to is that yes, if you're non-emotional, we pick up and magnify emotions. But we also, our natural state is very cool, calm, and collected when we are not picking up other people's emotions. I work from home, so I'm home most of the day by myself. I'm just like chilling, cool, calm, collected. And then as soon as I get around people is when I start to feel that surge of emotions. So something that's really important with non-emotionals is learning to flush those emotions out. So what can happen in that dance between a non-emotional emotional is we pick up the emotion, we magnify it because we're meant to see the data points. We're supposed to our system stretches out the emotion, gathers data. This is all happening in like microseconds. But then what can happen is our mind goes, "Oh, I have to hold on to this.
Hmm.
I have to do something with this." And then we keep it inside of our body, and that's not correct for us. We're supposed to feel it, flush it out. Feel it, flush it out. Let it go. Let yourself gather what you need from it and then let it go back out. And so you were saying that you have, the Joe Dispenza stuff. So I sometimes at a party will just go to the bathroom and take a couple deep breaths. And one of my things that I say is, this is not mine. This is not mine. I bring myself back to my natural state, which is cool, calm, and collected. And then I go back out. And I even sometimes in conversations when I'm feeling it, that fluctuation start to happen, I will literally just, this is not mine. This is not mine. This is not mine. So I can stay me in those moments. Of course, I don't want to, but what we can do too as a non-emotional is because, like you said, I don't know which one of you said it, but we can be taught things like, don't be too emotional. Don't do that. We can be very emotional too, Michelle, because when we feel those magnified emotions, we are the most emotional people in the
Yeah.
room. And so what we can also do is block feeling emotions. So you'll either become someone as a non-emotional, you'll either be the extreme emotional person because you'll feel everything and magnify everything and hold on to everything, or you'll go the complete opposite and you will wall
Hmm.
yourself up from emotions and you won't feel anything because it's just too much for you. And you can be anywhere in between as a non-emotional. But blocking, I did the same thing when I was younger. I blocked out the bad ones, the ones that I felt were not nice to feel.
Hmm.
I would only be happy. I would only be, bubbly. I would only ever let myself be in that kind of mood. But that's not a full spectrum of a human experience. And I will say that I specifically use the word data when I say when you're picking up emotions, it's data for you. I specifically use that word data because every single thing while you're walking through life, everything that you are capable of picking up is necessary data for your system to do its thing. There's no accidents about the places in you that are open and receptive to the world. Those are areas where you are collecting data. Everything is information for your system. You're collecting data from the outside world. So if you say you want to be here and you want to live your fullest expression of you, you want to find your purpose, you want to be as excellent as possible at the thing that you came here to do, cutting off a portion of the data that your system needs is not a full, it's not you're cutting yourself off at the knees. So getting, of course, that's difficult. I'm saying that as someone who experiences it, I'm still not fully there where I allow myself to just pick up on everything in the world
Yeah.
because it is like a very jolting experience compared to what we have, conditioned ourselves to do to protect. But the slowly opening up and being comfortable with everything that you're capable of picking up from the outside world, it just it's all it can ever do is feed the fullness of what you're capable of.
Mhm. Mhm.
I remember Taylor when we met and we had talked about this briefly, and you were in a heavier place in life, and we were talking about the emotional, non-emotional slightly, and you had said that you had asked Jenna, like, is this how you feel all the time?
Yeah. Yeah, so I was experiencing I've been very, very lucky in my life. I have not experienced a lot of grief. I have not experienced a lot of loss. And in the last year I lost my mother-in-law, which was probably to go from losing zero people to losing one of the most important people in your entire life who I'll stop it there or else I will get emotional. But when things like that happen in life, of course we experience emotions from them, Michelle. I'm not completely, you know, cool, calm, and collected when life is causing an
Mhm.
experience inside of me. That's the thing, though, is that emotions are caused by outside forces for a non-emotional. Whereas for an emotional, the emotion is an inside force. It's a reliable, consistent force. So like, let's talk about grief. Allie can be in a low and emotional state and she will feel the grief more deeply when she's in that state. And when she's in a high state, she'll feel more capable of handling a moment that might cause a breakdown in another time. For me, it was like this consistent, it was just always present. It still comes and
Yeah.
goes because obviously things outside of me will remind me of that experience. But in that moment, you saw me within a month of it happening. And to be holding emotions always and not have them coming from, even just being alone in my house and to be holding that emotion, that's why I said, is this what this is what you feel like all the time? Emotions are always present because it's so fascinating that I'll never really, like, even though I think that that's what you're feeling, it's not. Like, I know for a fact it's not the exact same. It's a taste of what you're experiencing because I can never fully know what it's like to be an emotional. I can break apart and stretch the emotion that I'm currently picking up on you, and I can feel it at I can see it in a magnified way than what you're feeling, but I'll never know what it's like to be you. And that's okay. I think that's the beautiful thing about like alluding to the fact that, earlier with the diagnosis and stuff, we're all trying to function the same. I think it's beautiful that we function the same and that I'll never understand your experience. That to me is more interesting than all of us trying to experience life through the same way.
Mhm.
Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that. And I think it also really, when Michelle and I will talk about emotional, non-emotional, I think there was one conversation we had where I said, well, now I just feel like everything non-emotionals feel are my fault and I'm the one
No,
causing the thing. And I think how you explained that. So thank you and your vulnerability and giving your example. For me, it really gives a good narrative and language to understand non-emotionals because I think again it's really easy to look at these definitions at like a surface level and be like, well, non-emotionals don't feel. And right, that was my shit. That's my stuff.
right.
Like,
Everyone thinks
I'm
that when they
making
read
you
it.
feel this way, but learning and having more understanding.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So the thing is that emotions are not what okay, how do I say this? The thing that I love about human design is that it's giving language to nuance.
Mhm.
It's attempting to give an as nuanced possible explanation of how humans function, where emotions are different than feelings, are different than thoughts, are different than like fears, are different than all the it's breaking apart all these things, taking like we're calling everything emotions.
Mm,
And human design says, well, actually, this is emotion and this is fear. And this is, you know what I mean?
yeah.
It's branching it off where emotions are, you are only, how does Jenna say it? Because again, like I say, I don't, I can only articulate. I can observe and articulate what I feel that you're experiencing, but I don't actually experience it. So sometimes I like to pull from the way Jenna describes it is that it's just it's a feeling of like melancholy versus a feeling of like sparkly like feeling. It's not grief is not in human design is not an emotion. Grief is like something that we
Yeah.
experience. So you're not when you're in a low, you're not causing grief to me. You're literally just think of it as like a colored lens. Like either you're causing the lens to be blue, or you're causing the lens to be pink, or you're causing the lens to be purple,
Hmm.
or whatever that moment of what you're experiencing is. It's not like this, if someone is experiencing a like detrimental emotion that is causing them physical pain, that's not being caused by you.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Gosh.
maybe
Yeah.
being colored by you, Allie,
Hmm.
but it's not being caused by you.
Mhm. Oh my God. You made me think of literally this week. And I won't go into detail because it's totally not my story to tell, but someone that I know locally, ran into my husband, told them this big news that they had that was just devastating. He came home, told me what happened, and he was like, "Hey, I told them you'd reach out," and tells me what happened, and I immediately just started crying. And I'm not even close with this person, but I know them, and the experience they're going through was so devastating. And for the rest of the night, every time I thought of it, and I'm like gonna cry now, and it's not personally happening to me, but I kept thinking, I mean, not even thinking and feeling, but I was like, wow, I imagine this feels like how I felt when my world came crashing, when I got this news, right? So I just felt like the heartbreak. And I knew on a very logical, and, I knew that there was no way that what I was feeling was even a fraction of what this person is going through. But I was like, I'm so sad. I am so
Yeah.
sad that they're going through this. I'm like emotional, literally. And I
Yeah.
and what's crazy about the non-emotional, and it's not crazy at all, is the bouncing between, like, I don't know if you experience this, but for me, I'll be like, I'm so sad and I am so sad for this person and I feel it. And then the next second and I'm like, and I'm just like, and this is really
Yeah.
crazy and funny that I feel this way because I feel like, you can kind of almost jump in and out of those depending, and it
Mm-hmm.
feels like extremes. Like I literally just went from my eyes watering to then being like almost like it's not even laughing at myself, but just being amused and fascinated by the fact that I can feel something so intensely that has absolutely nothing to in
Right.
my real life to do with me. And it's just an interesting thing to observe about yourself, about other people. It's just so many layers. Even yesterday, I voice noted Allie and I was like, I feel like I need to cry. And I'm trying to, I was on a dog walk and I was like, just cry, just do it. Like, and I
Cameron
couldn't.
Diaz in the
Yes,
holidays
yes,
is
in the
what I'm
Oh,
holidays.
thinking about. Yeah.
And I was like, just cry. And I wanted to cry so bad. And I was trying to force it. And I'm like, I can't do it, but I really just want this release. Of course, it was like day one of my cycle. It
yeah.
was, and I was frustrated. And talk about, that's my, red flag from the universe, right? I'm a manifesting generator and frustration. And I was listening to an episode that you and Jenna Zoe did, and I was like, okay, I can really see now how like the frustration is almost like I'm frustrated about external experiences happening, and I want to have this emotional association with the feeling of frustration. Like I want to feel like
Right.
I want to cry so that I can just release something. I don't know. It's so
Mm.
interesting to think about it, but we talk about like, I'm like, I need to cry. Let me just go put Queer Eye on and watch this show and just cry because I need to, like, I want to connect with that feeling and I can't just force it. I mean, in theory, I can because I'm putting on a show, but like, I need something to activate this emotion for me. I don't know. It's an interesting experience.
So what's funny is that, like I just said, that we are calling a lot of things emotions. And we're thinking, okay, so what Michelle's pointing to is something that's called your not self in your
Mhm.
chart.
Yeah.
And your not self is essentially, it's not an emotion. It's not tied to the emotional wave. It is a sensation in your body that is an indicator that there's something out of alignment in the way that you're doing something, in the way that you're experiencing. Like it's a red flag from the universe, essentially, or God or whatever. And so for Michelle, it's frustration. For me, it's bitterness. And for Allie, it's frustration as well. And so you'll feel this feeling of frustration. And then we think, okay, well, I feel frustrated and I need to get this out of my system. And so the way that I know to get it emotion in quotations out of my system is to feel it, right? But frustration, you're not self, it's not an emotion that can be flushed out. It's a indicator. It's like a red flashing light on the switchboard of your life,
Yeah.
the control center of your life. And but it's just funny, like I do the same thing. I can feel, to us, emotional experiences are like a little like package. Like we remember them, so we feel emotions so viscerally that we almost like, I've never explained it this way or even thought about it this way, but there's something that in even like a sad emotion that feels good to us.
Mhm. Yeah.
So we package it up and we go, oh, interesting. That's what that emotion and that's what that experience feels like. And we kind of like package it away. And then anything that reminds us of that emotion will bring that package back up and like let it that whole feeling flush through our whole system. Like,
Hmm.
ooh, there it is again. There's that feeling
Yeah,
again. And it's because we're a little bit addicted to emotions.
totally.
It's because like, there's a little bit of an indulgence in the experiencing that emotion, because anything that is not coming to you naturally, that you create artificially from outside of you, like it's like a little bit of a hit, we're like, ooh, ooh,
Totally.
even though it's sad, even though it's grief, even though it's any of the possible things you could experiencing, like, yeah, we're a little bit addicted to it. So
Totally.
I'll cry at a freaking
All
commercial.
the time. Yeah.
And then the next commercial, I'm like, oh my God, how special. It's like
Yeah.
I can change at the drop of a hat.
Yeah, totally. And there's so many other elements. Like I always think about one being a Leo sun, right? There's always like this dramatic flair that I like that I always associate with my emotions. It's like that picture of Harry Potter staring out the window of the train. Do you know what I'm talking about? Where
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
envision myself
Taylor,
like
no
that,
Harry
where
Potter.
oh, is that your, but like I
Huge Harry.
imagine that picture of myself being like, I'm being so dramatic about how I feel. Like
Love it.
right? Like I almost put myself like I'm a main character in my own movie. And I don't know, I think this is just so essential to who I am, just also personality wise. Like I am going to be a little bit dramatic about certain things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it feels funny because that calm, cool, collected state. So it's like it's an indulgence, and it's like I
Yep.
get to experience it in this way. And yeah, it is so fascinating.
So we can call on that drama on at any moment. Whereas Allie, the way she experiences it is she will indulge in the drama or be in the drama when she's in a low.
Yeah.
So it's almost like it's dictated by her wave of when she's doing that stare out the window, the rain is raining. The song that comes to me is that Hillary Duff song that's when the let the rain come down.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
That just like drama.
Yes.
I think if we're making light of, these like low emotions, but like that is life.
Yeah.
That is the fullness of the spectrum of how we get to experience being a human being. And so to make light of those things isn't a bad thing.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, it's funny because it's almost the same way that when Ali's in like or anyone is in their emotional wave or in the high or in the lows and in my mind, I'm like, okay, yeah, okay. Like
Yeah.
I'm like, it's gonna be okay. But obviously, you don't want to I never want to one like label anything that you're feeling and tell you because who am I? And I also
Mm-hmm.
and then of course you layer in like coaching there you're going into you're putting yourself in, hour-long sessions and training yourself to not have a reaction to some, or two, but like not tie it to your own emotions. And so there's that
Mm-hmm.
practice of like witnessing, holding space, but then like not making it about you. And
Yep.
but it's just yeah, so anyway, so I always kind of go back and forth between that of like again, like I think the stories, the conditioning is that like you're not feeling, you don't have, whenever I'm in that space that I'm like, okay, what's the big deal? Okay,
Yeah.
relax, like, or with my husband too, like, okay, we're gonna is the sky
But we
falling on
need
us? Yeah,
both.
we need both.
We
And
need both
yeah,
in the world. We need people who bring color
yeah,
to life, and we need people who can cut the color and just see in the
right.
moment. For example, in that time when I was experiencing loss, I didn't feel it immediately, but I had a job to do because I am extremely gifted at cutting through chaos and creating organization and saving the day and bringing and like fixing things and giving people what they need and nurturing. I'm good at that. And so in that moment, it was like game on for me. This I'm ready to rock, like put me in coach kind of feeling. And so it is extremely beneficial that I was able to not be colored by my emotions in those moments and then later be able to open myself up to him because I don't want to ever cut myself off from feeling
Yeah,
everything, but it serves us in certain times of our life. So we need both.
yeah,
And I think
yeah,
it's a good transition into we wanted to highlight tips is the wrong word, but how can we be in community and relationship with emotionals and non-emotionals to really support everyone's highest good. And I came to that thought because Michelle, when you were talking, I know for me sometimes with non-emotionals, like in my head, I'm like, why don't you think this is a big deal? Right. And the stories, like, do you not have my back? Are you not? And then being in partnership with Michelle and feeling so safe and being able to just say all of the things karmic mirror related has been a mirror to me of like, why do you need Michelle to validate, to react the way you do?
Mm,
And that's my work to do. That's not on Michelle, but also, once I can parse that out and again, learn more. And I think that that's the big thing is first, we can just learn more about emotional and non-emotional so that we
hmm.
don't make it about ourselves and we don't tell stories about other people. But what other practical things can we do? I know we talked about as non-emotionals finding ways to flush the energy, but
Yeah.
what other things?
Yeah, I think for the flushing out, it's going to be different for every non-emotional when you are picking up on those emotions. I was talking to a mom actually recently who was a non-emotional mother who had four kids. I don't know the specifics of if they were emotionals or non-emotional, but her and her husband were separated and she felt like whenever she picked up her kids, there was always this like really heightened experience of emotions
yeah,
and she didn't know what to do to combat that of it feels like they're very, they're so chaotic when they come back to me. And I said, create almost some routine like routines that you do or practices that you do that are sort of like changing the state. Getting like movement can do that. Like, you can go work out and flush out emotions. You can dance around and flush emotions. You can play a song that is, if you're in a, like, you're feeling like that kind of low emotional magnification, play a song that is the opposite of that to lift yourself up, kind of pull yourself, just like changing the state. Or even sometimes, like it is, it's just breathing.
yeah,
This is not mine. This is not mine. And every non-emotional is going to have different things that work for them. So it's like I can point you in the direction, but you're ultimately going to find what works for you. And then with like you said, Allie, I think the biggest key is for me is being able to that's why it was so important to us in the app for you to be able to our app is called Human Design with Jenna Zoe, is to be able to put charts of all of your loved ones. So you can add the charts of everyone that you know in there and you can look at, okay, am I a non-emotional. If you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see there's something that says how your emotions function. Am I a non-emotional or am I an emotional? And then looking at the people in your life of like, what are they? And then, like you said, not making that wrong. Every single person is not thinking the same way about experiences as you are. They're having a completely unique experience of everything that you guys are even co-experiencing together. And so understanding that, I think, helps. Embracing difference, embracing that there are 8 billion different experiences of life happening all at the same time. And there's 8 billion different ways of being a human. And we're never going to get on the same page, ever, 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 ever.
Yeah.
We can try, especially with people like Allie, who are here to create togetherness, who are here to, find the common ground and be able to get like, okay, observe a situation of groups of people and say, okay, here's how we all win in this situation. Of course, there's situations like that. But as far as someone fully understanding the way that you're experiencing something and needing them to experience the same way as you, it's never going to happen. So let go of that.
I listened to a tip for emotionals of like, be careful when you're neglecting or over dramatizing your emotions
Mm.
also. And that kind of goes back
Yeah.
to like finding what you were saying, Taylor, finding the core example. And I was thinking back to conversation I had with a family member, a big narrative, especially around the holidays, for I'm so alone. I'm so alone. And just the heaviness of like being alone. And I understand, and this isn't a to fault of anyone, but when people, well, I know how you feel, or I know, and then I'll like well, you don't know how I feel because da 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 da, and like really just taking pause to let those emotions, and I think saying the thing, I know having spaces to say the thing, but really the discernment of who I lean on to say the thing, right? And Michelle does a
Hmm.
really beautiful job of letting that wave go through, like letting me go
Yeah.
through the wave. And I think what you were saying for non-emotionals is like, who did I pick this up from is a tip for them too.
Yep. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so I think the main two is as an emotional like Allie, not needing when you're feeling in a low or feeling in a high, not needing to associate it with something outside of you. Whereas if you're an emotional, if you're feeling like an magnified emotion, what outside of me is causing this? Because it isn't coming from inside of you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think what I put two and two together with like that as of late is that I can really feel when I'm numbing the emotions. And at some point, I feel
Hmm.
like they need to come out. And, I had just gone through a lot of heavy stuff. And what kind of clicked for me now is the universe was like, you just need to be in your own space and you need to feel whatever you need to feel in that moment. And then I think can put narratives around that, like you were saying.
Yeah. It's just the song that's playing for you today.
Yeah.
It's just the lens that you're supposed to view your current moment through.
Yeah.
That's it.
I think that's a perfect note to land on because it gives, even I think just those two examples give me a lot to take away. I can only imagine someone listening, I hope, can
Mhm.
can
Mhm.
really
Yeah.
resonate with that. Yeah, I love that. The language is so important. I'm like, no, but also, hold on.
I can
I
Yeah.
see
think
you
as
jotting
we
down, and I know that will come back up, that language, some beautiful.
yeah, it's just always reframing, right? Like I remember when I started to shift from, and I still do it, but I think starting to shift and start saying like, oh, that really lands or that resonates with me because it takes this, I don't know, it's just so powerful to start to give those subtle shifts in the way that we communicate with people because for me
Hmm.
anyways, I have a habit of saying like, oh, I really love that. I love that. I love that. And I'm like, and I don't know, that's just one example. I don't even think that's the right one, um, but yeah, shifting the language is really, really helpful. So, anyways, I think it's great. Let's talk about non-human design or related questions. But we wanted to ask, do you have a quote or a mantra that really resonates
Oh,
with you that you would share? Anything?
there's a million I could think of. One of my favorites too is I think it's Steve Jobs, and I think it's very projector, but also it can apply to a lot of people, is that you give a lazy person a hard job and they'll find the easiest way to do it. I don't know why as a kid, like I think because I'm like so about efficiency, so about only like applying the amount of energy necessary to get the job done. I think we are taught that that is a bad thing, where it's like, no, you should put in as much effort as possible in order for something to be worth something. And that's not true because when you are doing things as your natural self or doing things in the way that is extremely aligned for you, it's it's meant to feel easeful. It's meant to feel like it's pouring out of you. You're gonna often look back and go, "Oh my God, I don't even know how I did that." That is actually the my like North Star. And of course, like people who have, more of an engine like Michelle and like Ali who they're gonna feel like easeful and good when they are doing that more of like churning energy and productivity and go, go, go and do, do, do. I'm so capable. Look how much I'm capable of doing. That's gonna give you that feeling. It's never given me that feeling. And so to be okay with finding the simplest way to do the best job possible to me is doing it in the way that's most aligned for you.
Yeah, so projector.
So
I love
projector,
it. I
like
wrote
how
it down
funny
because
is
I was
that?
like, I'm gonna text that to my
Give that
husband.
to your husband.
Since you referenced earlier that you love podcasts, I'll throw in what's a book or a podcast that has had a significant impact on your life?
Honestly, the biggest impact is the Almost 30 podcast. And I don't listen to as many podcasts as I used to now because I think probably you guys have this feeling when you're doing a podcast, you almost feel like you don't want to expose yourself too much to what other people are doing because you kind of want to find your voice, find your lane. So lately I don't listen to as many podcasts as I used to, but the Krista Williams and Lindsay Simsick, I think her last name is different now that she's married, but their Almost 30 podcast is how I found Jenna. And I think both of those women are huge, huge expanders for me. Lindsay is now a mother. Krista, she was in a marriage and got divorced and is like learning to like she's a 3-5 profile as well. So I resonate with her so much. And I think the podcasts that I love listening to are people who are just like being themselves, just like their real selves. And I think you can feel that. I think it's something that we sniff in people. And then what was the other books?
Well, I said book or podcast.
Podcasts I listen to more for, I would say growing myself, filling myself up. But books, I'm a huge like fantasy, sci-fi, romance like lover. So I think obviously I love you mentioned Harry Potter. I love those books. Those kind of books are the books that have changed my life. Funny enough,
Yeah.
I actually think there's so much that you can learn from really well written fiction.
Yes.
It's really to me like if you read the Harry Potter series, for example, there's so much of, J.K. Rowling's perspective in those books. The other author I really love is Sarah J. Maas. I don't even know if I say her name right. It
Yeah.
might be Sarah J. Maas. Everyone's like reading her books right now. There's the A Court of Thorns series, which like reintroduced me back into reading fiction. There's something about like immersing in someone's world that is so good for my mental health, is so good for like my emptying out, talking about emotions is like sometimes like it is immersing myself in a book that allows me to sort of flush out the emotions that I picked up or flush out the outside world and just go into this, fantasy world for a little bit. I
Yeah.
love I love it. It's life-changing to me.
Oh my God, I'm so right there with you. The Throne of Glass series, first of all, I love Sarah J. Maas, and that's like so my genre as well.
Yeah.
I just love the fantasy world. I just love it. I mean, and also just I love to go down the rabbit hole of like really odd topics. I think that's the Aquarius rising in me of just like I love a history podcast. I love, all of it. And the Throne of Glass series, to your point, like there's nothing that I love and am motivated and expanded more than a really strong, badass female lead
Yeah.
who is so quote unquote flawed or is like working through their shame and like I I I just love these themes because you can draw so many cool parallels to the hero's journey, to just
Mm-hmm.
coming through to what it looks like to tunnel into your shame and come out of it so much more powerful as a result of not running from it and not being fearful of it. And I think that shows through a lot of different storylines. So, of course, obviously, I was like, so lit up when you were like, you said fantasy, and I was
Yeah.
like,
Throne of Glass
I don't read
is
those, but I was just looked right at
yeah.
Michelle because I know.
As a child, Harry Potter was, I read the entire series 8 times. I'm not even kidding. I've
love that.
probably read it 10 to 15 all the way through at this point in my life. But Throne of Glass is like my adult Harry Potter. It's like, it to me is on another level of fantasy, like quality of
Yes. Yeah,
written fiction. She's brilliant.
I agree.
Yeah.
There's
Maybe
so
I'll have
many.
to check those out.
Yeah,
It's
try
so
it.
interesting. My
It's a commitment.
It
You
is.
are committing to 14 books.
Yeah, here's what I
Yeah, it's
do
a
know
lot.
though, is that it's so interesting. My family, like such avid readers, and growing up, I hated reading until I found it's Generator, until I found the book that lit me up. And
Yeah.
so
Mm.
I won't let myself finish books now. Like if I start a book and I'm
Yeah.
wandering, I'm like, I don't like this book, right? And
Mm.
so
We can talk more about why your brain does that.
Yeah, that's
That's a
so
whole other
cool.
podcast.
okay, we
Yeah.
won't steer off of that. So we
Yeah.
also at the end of every Karmic Mirror episode, Michelle and I like to ask a question just about like self-love and self-care. And for our guests, just Taylor, what does self-love mean to you?
I think self-love to me is self-acceptance. I don't think that we are ever going to love every single aspect of us. I've actually really, really learned this from Jenna. She's someone who has really nurtured this in me of being really comfortable with seeing things that I don't like about myself and being okay with there being things about yourself that you're not necessarily proud of. I think when you shy away from that and you kind of, it's almost like you can kind of spiritual bypass or bypass. Self love is like, oh, I have to love everything about me and ignore all the things that I don't love. Where the truth is, there's things that you don't love about your husband. There's things that you don't love about your mom. There's
Mhm.
things that you don't love
Mhm.
about. Every single person has unlovable things about them. And ultimate self love is self acceptance and being okay with that.
Yeah.
I can't remember where I saw it on someone on Instagram. It was just this great reel where she was like, am I annoying? Yeah, I know I can be annoying. It was kind of the same,
Yeah.
like, you're not going to tell me anything I don't know about myself, right?
Yeah.
Can I be a little bratty? Yeah, I can be a little bratty. And that's what
Yeah.
made me
Like
think about,
we're
yeah.
humans. Like even just recent, like we can be going through things, especially in relationship to people in friendships where, even just recently, there's like behaviors that I've done in friendships that I'm just like, my God, what?
Yeah.
And like being okay with seeing the reasons why I did those things. If we're not willing to see, there's no way we'll ever be able to change.
Yeah.
So, like just accepting those things are actually what helps you kind of transmute them and decide, okay, well, do I want to just accept this about me? Or is this something, do I think like, you know what, actually, I think this is actually holding me back.
Yeah, totally. I could keep talking for like another 3 hours, but
Yeah,
that's,
for sure.
another time. And this was amazing and so insightful. And I'm actually really looking forward to listening to the episode when it comes out, so that I can continue to deepen my own learning. But where can we find you? Anything else that you want to share? And of course, we want to make sure that people download the Human Design with Jenna Zoe app because it is really freaking amazing. It is such a great app.
We're very, very proud of
It's
it.
awesome. It's really, really good.
So on Instagram, I'm Tay Grewe,
Yeah.
Taygrewe. Our Instagram for the app and for all things human design is just at human design on Instagram. I mentioned Jenna a couple times. She is the woman that I work for. She's to me the person that has made human design extremely accessible and it presents the information and understands the information to a depth that she's able to make it understandable to to just like an average person. She brought that to me, and so I'm so proud to work with her specifically. And we have an app where we've taken like all of her perspectives on human design and poured them into this app in a way that you can get a full reading of your chart in there. You can, read through it. You can listen to it like a playlist. You can put every single person that you know chart that you can do unlimited charts in there. That was very important to us. There's a whole library of tips. Like Ali was asking for tips about emotionals or non-emotionals, that you go into the tips section. There's a full library where you can look for the emotions section, and you can listen to almost like mini podcasts about different like ways that you apply your emotions, or different ways that you apply anything in the chart. And there's so much more that we have planned that isn't even in there yet, that I'm really, really excited about. So,
Yeah, I cannot rave enough about the work that both of you
mhm.
do, and especially the app. It's really accessible. I think
Yeah.
even if you download it
Yeah.
for free, you still
Hmm.
get access, I think, to what you call as your big three for you.
I think yeah, it's like
It's
the price of
$6.99.
a latte.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's different in every country, so it's just depending on the conversions, but it's like basically the price of a latte, an expensive latte
Yeah.
a month.
Yeah, and so accessible to, I mean, you have the podcast for those who want to take a little bit more
Free.
time, free, half an hour-ish they run, and
Yeah.
also just those mini podcasts. And again, it's just why I think it's so accessible for however you like to learn, or however you like, what area you want to lean into. So I cannot rave about it enough. I told Taylor that
Thank you.
at VCon, I was having people download it. I was just at like every barbecue I'm at, it just comes up. And so I cannot rave enough about the work that you do, Taylor. So thank you for bringing your light to our podcast today. We are just
Thank you
forever,
for
forever
having me.
grateful.
You guys were so nice to talk to, and it just it makes me feel so happy that there's other people out in the world that are applying this, and that this stuff matters too, because it really has genuinely changed everything in my life.
Our
So thank you
pleasure.
for even just bringing this
Absolutely.
conversation to your
Well,
audience.
Oh, thank you, Taylor.
all good. Thanks for listening, and next time.
Thanks for tuning in. If you resonate with today's conversation, connect with us on Instagram at Karmic Mirror Podcast and send us a message.
And don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen. And if you're loving Karmic Mirror, we'd appreciate a glowing review or share with someone who could benefit.
As we close, remember, life is not a one-size-fits-all approach. How are you honoring your unique path? Stay curious and always be kind to yourself. Until next time on Karmic Mirror.